the dread from uptown. You know my sound is major. I know you like the lyrics, kid, so just do me a favor. Tell the tech to turn my dad up. This is a pack up. Hey, yo, don't back up, because I wanna dive in and swim in the mentals where your thoughts roam. I wanna make you know my home, therefore you'll never be alone. But when you hear my song, sing along with the rhythm, cause I got big and fat beats that I give them. Yes, it's the ears and I'm checking out the blonde one. Maybe I can have one, maybe I can con one. Chill, I'm one with God, brothers. It's hard to stay straight until you're scared straight, and then you can't wait to get out.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. This is May 6th, 2013. We are recording for this weekend, May 12th. And, man, Ramon, I'll tell you what, this week, this last 4 to 5 days here in Washington, makes me really understand why I like living here. It has been absolutely gorgeous here. And none of those funky little streaks in the sky or anything. It's been gorgeous.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, yesterday was a really gorgeous day here, and we went up to this place in Tochigi and saw these trees that their branches extend very far out, and they put up these pipes to like hold the branches, and these long flowers, really long flowers, like 2 foot branches full of flowers that hang down from it. It looks like a weeping willow with flowers on it.
Oh, really?
I forgot what it's called.
The Japanese in their gardens, they like that stuff, right?
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. So, guys, you can catch us on, obviously Facebook, Twitter, www.the100thmonkeyradio.com, YouTube, Vimeo. Let's see, where else, Ramon? What else? We do have Stephen Greer's Serious movie available through the website, and if you would like to check that out, you can rent it right through our website, which actually helps support the 100th Monkey Radio also. So, and we want to thank everybody that's done so far.
Yeah, you guys have been a great help supporting us, and we really thank you.
So, anything else in the news here lately, Ramon, that besides the obvious, it seems like that whole crap back east and on the northeastern area of our country is kind of calming down. I don't know, maybe it's just our society's short memory that's kicking in.
Yeah, probably. I haven't really heard much about it on this side. But I did hear something funny that I forgot what country was it. I think, Turkey was going to start buying nuclear power plant parts from Japan, and I said, "Wow, really?"
Really? Why don't they just buy it from Iran? They're right next door.
Yeah, what I find funny is like, it's like if I know you have a lemon and I'm gonna buy the parts off of you.
Right. Let's. You guys are gonna sell used parts from Fukushima.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Oh, so I'm excited about our show tonight, Ramon, and I just kind of like to just jump right into it.
Yeah. Let me just make one comment about it, because I was talking to a microbiologist and another friend of mine when I was living in New York, and he's a microbiologist in Columbia University, and I was telling him about remote viewing, and he just said, "Oh, that's all hooey." And I said, "Well, you have unclassified documents from the CIA that it really did happen. You have people that have studied in the lab. Why don't you look into it?" And he said, "Oh, that's hooey. I'm not going to bother with that." And I find that many times, again, that, quote-unquote scientists won't even look at the information. And they just say, "This is hooey," without even ever, what's the famous quote you like to say, Tom?
Oh, wherever the imagination takes you.
No, the other one.
Oh, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance?
Yeah, and I find that a lot of scientists are, really fall into that, because don't even bother looking at, the information before they make a judgment.
Right. Well, their funders don't support that view.
Yeah. So who do we have?
So we've got Russell Targ with us tonight. He is a physicist and author who is a pioneer in the development of laser and laser applications and was co-founder of the Stanford Research Institute's investigation into psychic abilities in the 1970s and 80s for the CIA. This previously classified work in what is now widely known as remote viewing was published in Nature, the Proceedings of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, and the Proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Targ has a BS in physics from Queens College and did graduate work in physics at Columbia University. He received 2 National Aeronautics and Space Administration Awards for inventions and contributions in laser and laser communications, and invitations were accepted in 1983 and 84 to present remote viewing demonstrations and to address the USSR Academy of Sciences on this research. In 1998, Targ retired from Lockheed Martin Missiles and Space Company as a senior staff scientist, where he developed airborne laser systems for the detection of windshear. He now pursues ESP research in Palo Alto, California, and is also publishing special editions of classic books in psychical research. He is co-author of 8 books dealing with the scientific investigation of psychic abilities, Buddhism, and a recent autobiography. His website is www.espresearch.com. I would like to give you a warm welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Mr. Targ.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you this evening. And I should say that my brand new book is called The Reality of ESP, a physicist's proof of psychic abilities. So we're no longer apologizing for ESP or studying ESP. It's been proven with the same strength that anything in modern physics can be proven. For example, I would say that the reality of ESP is so strong that it would be statistically unreasonable to deny it, because the evidence for ESP statistically is 10 times stronger than the evidence that you should take aspirin to prevent a heart attack. So that's what we mean by I mean when I say we've proven something.
Right. Yeah, I don't think, especially with our listener base is definitely going to be on board with this and fully understand that ESP is a reality. I'm just totally thrilled myself that finally that the masses, our social society is finally starting to really accept this. I mean, it's becoming much more acceptable in our society.
For example, that's true. For example, if you search the little corner of ESP that I've been teaching, it's called remote viewing, where a person can quiet his mind and describe and experience what's happening in the distance or what's happening in the future. So we call that remote viewing. And if you go to Google and search on remote viewing, there's more than 2 million pages dealing with that. So that's a lot of pages for something many people think doesn't exist. Right. 2 million pages on remote viewing describing what it is, how to do it, and where to find a teacher.
So why were you were one of the founders of the whole program that the CIA and NASA and our defense agencies decided to promote. How did that all come about? And what was their motivations behind it? Why did they want this you to do this for them in the first place?
Well, my partner Hal Putoff and I had the idea that we could train people to quiet their mind and describe what's going on in the distance. And we had a policeman, Pat Price, who was a natural psychic policeman from Burbank. And we had a activity which is like psychic hide and go seek, where every day Price would sit with me in an electrically shielded room, and my colleague Hal Putoff and the lab director or a contract monitor would be sent to some undisclosed location in the San Francisco Bay Area. And sitting in our little soundproof booth, shielded enclosure, Price would try and describe what it looks like where Hal is hiding. Does he see a garden or a bridge or a pedestrian overpass or a department store? What does he see? And after he finished those detailed descriptions, we would then have a judge try and match up what the psychic policeman said compared with the driving instructions to get Hal to a distant place. And the judge was able to match up 7 out of the 9 in first place, so that each day, if we were looking for Hal, if Hal had been kidnapped by terrorists for 9 days in a row, we would have found him the first place we looked 7 out of the 9 times.
That's pretty impressive.
So it's remarkable. So that's the little story that we took to the CIA, and we said, I think we have something here that should be interesting for you. And the CIA said, well, John McMahon, who is head of intelligence at the CIA, a top guy, said, well, that's pretty interesting, and I have met you guys before when you were working for the CIA doing laser stuff. If you can describe a target that's of actual interest to us, we'll support you. My opinion, said John, is that you're wasting your time describing churches and swimming pools where this during the Cold War, of course, is it where we have places we really need to know about. So a couple of weeks later, he sent a CIA agent to our laboratory at Stanford, and the agent gave us some geographical coordinates, latitude and longitude, and I gave those to Pat Price, the policeman. And he said, well, I'm psychically laying on a building while a giant gantry crane is rolling back and forth over my body. So I see this giant thing. It has an 8-wheel gantry crane with wheels on both sides of the building. This is the biggest crane I've ever seen. I've got to draw it. So he made a drawing of that and said, in the building that I'm lying on, the people are trying to fabricate the biggest sphere I've ever seen. This sphere must be 60 feet in diameter, and they're trying to weld it together. So we went down to the vault under our building where the CIA guy was hiding with his secret satellite photographs, and we showed him the drawing that Price made of the crane, and he then unrolled his big satellite photograph, and indeed, there was a gantry crane at the site. And I show all of this in my new book, The Reality of ESP. I can show all of these previously secret documents. That one is still marked secret because the satellite photography in the Cold War was top secret stuff. So it's only new that I'm able to show those documents. And indeed, there was a giant 8-wheel gantry crane rolling back and forth over the building. And 2 years later, when the Russians finally finished their nuclear containment vessel, they rolled this big steel sphere out of the building, and indeed, Price had exactly drawn what was there and even had the dimensions correct. So that was such a big hit that no one in the Western world knew about this nuclear containment vessel, that we had a congressional investigation. The idea no good deed goes unpunished. So our remote viewing was so excellent that the House Intelligence Oversight Committee in Congress was concerned that there must have been a security leak. So we had to get together with all of our sponsors from DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, Army Intelligence, CIA, and so forth, and they all said, no, there was no leak here. Nobody knew anything about it in the whole Western world, only the psychics in California. And that was how we got set up to start teaching remote viewing to the U.S. Army intelligence, because the Army didn't want to have to come to deal with psychics in California each time they wanted an operational thing done. It was embarrassing. Right. So I had the job of training up 6 Army intelligence officers that I chose from a big group. And those 6 guys were then the seed corn for creating a substantial Army intelligence program at Fort Meade in Maryland, and that went on until the middle of the 1990s.
Do you happen to recall what your criteria was when you were choosing those 6?
Well, we interviewed 30 people, and my criteria, that's a good question. My criteria is that the person had to be outgoing, be willing to tell me about his experiences. I want to know what experiences he had in his life that made him think that he wanted to make a career change involving ESP. I wanted people who are confident, intelligent, and outgoing, because we know historically that extroverts are more psychic than introverts. At least they manifest it with a higher regularity.
I didn't know that.
For example, that is in a society where the society thinks you're crazy if you manifest psychic abilities, it's going to require a strong character to tell people about your psychic abilities.
Right.
That's true.
So, for example, Joe McMoneagle, who's probably the outstanding remote viewer in America today, with the recent death of Ingo Swann, who taught us all how to do remote viewing. When I interviewed Joe in this basement of the building at Fort Meade, where these guys were all lined up, Joe said, well, when I first went to Vietnam, I got off of this C-130 to begin my tour of duty, and as I was walking away from it, I had a really clear picture in my mind's eye of a big yellow jet, like a 747, big bright yellow airplane. Never seen anything like that. And indeed, 2 years later, when his first tour was over, he was what do they call it? Exfiltrated from Vietnam, demobilized on a Air America jet, which was a big yellow airplane for the airline that the CIA had put together.
Wow.
So with this narrative he gave me, I really felt, it was a heartfelt story. As he was shocked that he had seen this bizarre banana-shaped airplane, and then 2 years later he flew out on it. I said, okay, give that guy a check mark. We'll put him on top of our favorites list. And indeed, Joe has turned out to be one of the most reliable psychics in America.
Right.
The movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats, how much, I know it was like comedy, but how much of that was truth? Was some of it truth, or did you ever get a chance to see that movie?
The important thing in The Men Who Stare at Goats is that there really was an American psychic Army Corps. So the premise of the film, in spite of it's one of the things that people laugh at most, the premise of the film was actually true. That we trained 6 Army guys, and then they trained up a whole bunch more, and those are the guys who eventually told the world about remote viewing in the 1990s. But indeed, there was a psychic Army Corps, something like what they showed in the movies.
Right.
But no ghosts were killed in our program.
Do you happen to know if that corps is still active?
I don't think it is active. In 1995, the head of the CIA, Robert Gates, who became our Secretary of Defense. In 1995, Gates was head of the CIA, and he said on the Nightline show that America no longer has any enemies that are serious. With the Berlin Wall down and Russia disintegrating, we don't need a psychic Army Corps anymore because we don't have any enemies.
Yeah. I don't know.
So,
I have problems seeing us throw such a valuable tool away.
Well, you got to be courageous to deal with psychics because it's like in the financial market, bad money drives out good monies. It's the psychics on the street corner who want to read your palm and tell your future, give a bad reputation to the people who are using it in defense work or psychically.
Right.
So you have to be courageous, and I don't see a lot of courage or intelligence in the current administration to make me believe that they have a functioning psychic Army Corps anymore.
Right.
Now, there could be a psychic Army Corps in the basement of the Pentagon that I don't know about, but I would be very surprised.
Right.
Because all the people who are supporting us there are a number of things. They're very smart, courageous guys, and they were all getting close to retirement. So they all could take the attitude, this is very interesting, looks good to me, and what the hell, I'm going to be out of here in a few years anyway.
So you were primarily just a trainer. Did you do any active remote viewing for the government?
I did occasional remote viewing. You know, those who can't teach, and my principal job was as a teacher and a facilitator. One day we were tracking Hal Putoff, my colleague, as he traveled through South America. He was in Colombia, and Pat Price, who's a great psychic, was describing, and we got no feedback in this case. This Price was a 10-trial experiment as Hal would travel around, and the idea was that Price would say each day at noon his impression of where Putoff was. So he'd describe things like a volcano or a market or a harbor or a church, and then on day 5 he didn't show up. I can't remember. I think he had to go to the dentist, so he just didn't show up for the remote viewing. And I'm sitting in a little shielded room by myself with my tape recorder. So I said, this is a remote viewing with Russ Targ and Pat Price. We're tracking Hal Putoff, and Price doesn't seem to be here. So in the spirit that the show must go on, I'll describe Hal's location as best I can. So I closed my eyes, and I described a airport on an island, and I said there's an airport building on the left, and sand and grass on the right, and ocean at the end of the runway. That's what I got. And it took me about that long to say, and then I made a little sketch showing the airport, the ocean, and the building, and the grass on the other side. And it turned out that was surprisingly correct. That he exactly had made a side trip off the country of Colombia to an island called San Andreas, and came back with a photograph remarkably close to the drawing that I made. And again, I show that in my new book, In the Reality of ESP. In fact, in my new book, I tell people how to get in touch with their psychic abilities, how to work with a partner who will bring you little objects to describe, so you can learn to separate the psychic signal from your mental noise and get in touch with the part of you that's psychic.
You're doing it right now, because I was just about to ask, can any of us do this, and what benefits does it have for us? So you cued right in on my psychic question.
So I've done quite a number of psychic things in my life. As I once gave a lecture, it must have been a book talk at the home of a socialite, a wealthy woman just north of here in Atherton, and had a bunch of Stanford people and local doctors and so forth. And the next day, I was sitting at my desk at Lockheed doing exceptionally boring tasks, spreading numbers for next year for my laser program. And this lady called up and said, Russell, can you help me? I've lost my tennis bracelet. My husband's going to kill me. And I said, well, I don't know what a tennis bracelet is. And she said, well, it's a circle of diamonds on a platinum wire that I wear on my wrist. This is a simple little diamond bracelet, tennis bracelet. I should have known that probably. So I said, okay, let me turn away from my screen here. And I said, do you have a place on your property where there's two white posts, two 4x4s with pointed tops about 4 feet apart? And she said, well, by the back entrance of our house, there's a driveway that goes to the back door, and then there's these two posts that mark off the path. And I said, well, look around the base of those posts, and I think you'll see it in the grass. She came back 5 minutes later and said, that's amazing. I have it in my hand. Thank you so much.
Wow.
She did not say the magic words, how can I ever thank you? So I could have probably thought of something for her to do. But remote viewing is very easy to do. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to eat porridge at the feet of your guru or spend lots of money. It's a natural ability. And I've been teaching remote viewing because it's very much fun to do, because I don't have to teach a damn thing. I'm basically giving people permission to make use of an ability they already have.
So do you find that it's just like seeing or smelling, touching, or is it more like playing the piano?
Well, it has both in common. It's more like a direct perception. It's like playing the piano in that playing the piano looks quite impossible. If you see some great pianist playing, you say, oh my God, I could never do that. And that's wrong, because anyone who actually wants to learn to play the piano and will take lessons for half a year can do surprisingly well. Because playing the piano is one of these things that looks much harder than it really is. Because there was a time in the 1930s, for example, when every well-brought-up young person played the piano. Every middle-class home in America had a piano in the living room, and all the girls, at least, could play the piano. So it couldn't be that hard. It just looks hard.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that here, Russell, in Japan. A lot of people can play. Every single teacher, because I used to teach English in a public school, and every single teacher can play the piano. Or every single Japanese teacher can play the piano.
I believe that. Now, there's a difference. I was babysitting a fancy piano for a period of time. I had rented out my house, and when I came back, I had a fabulous baby grand Bechstein $10,000 piano was sitting in my living room. So I thought I shouldn't pass this opportunity. And at the end of 6 months, I was able to play little Bach suites and things like that. It was hard for me. It was clear that, yes, I could play the piano, and I did surprisingly well, considering I have no talent. But it was also obvious that no matter how long I practiced, I was not going to get to Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And remote viewing is like that. In a workshop that I do, or even a demonstration, half the people in the room will do surprisingly well. They'll be shocked at how accurately they're able to describe my little object. So the ability is latent, like piano playing, and then there will be a subset of people who go on to be super psychics, like Ingo Swann, Pat Price, Joe McMoneagle, my good friend Hella Hammond. So we have a number, 8 or 10 people who were astonishingly accurate, reliable, almost all the time. And then there are other people who were pretty good and would frequently surprise themselves at how good they were. So it's a little the distribution of ability is like playing the piano. Everybody can do it somewhat, and a few people are really good.
So what are What are some of the other benefits from learning how to do this remote viewing and proving it to yourself that ESP is real?
Well, there are a number of things you can do with it. For example, if you become a sort of journeyman, middle-level remote viewing person, then you can do important things like finding your car keys and finding a parking place, which is becoming more valuable worldwide. We were able to use remote viewing to forecast changes in the silver commodity market. So 9 weeks in a row, we were able to forecast whether silver would go up a little, up a lot, down a little, or down a lot. And we were correct 9 out of 9 trials, made $120,000, which was a lot of money in the 1980s. So we're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and Nova made a film about the work that we had done called The Case of ESP, and you can still see that if you search on Google. If you search on Google, you can find this very interesting 90-minute film called The Case of ESP, and that was stimulated by our success forecasting the market. So you can find your car keys, you can find a parking place, you can make money in the stock market, and my opinion is the most important thing you can do with remote viewing is discover who you are. For example, I was sitting in the dark for 10 years at SRI helping people get in touch with their psychic abilities. That was my job. I don't drive. My vision is very poor. So I never got to go anywhere with my physical body. But I helped a lot of people and shared experiences with them describing distant locations, finding downed airplanes, finding prisoners, looking in on the American hostages in Iran, describing Brezhnev's office, finding a Soviet submarine. So I had a lot of activity that I saw in my little remote viewing booth, and it became clear to me as a scientist that who we are could not possibly be just physical bodies. There's got to be more to us than meat and potatoes, because people are able to describe and experience things that is nowhere near their physical body. So the Buddhists are aware that if you think that who you are is what you see in the mirror in the morning, then you're in for a lot of suffering. At least that's my experience. That is, it appears that who you are is this non-local awareness. And the Buddhists understood that 1,200 years ago. And there was a book, surprisingly like my book. This is written by a Buddhist teacher named Padma Sambhava, great Buddhist teacher, who is the person who brought Buddhism from India to Tibet. So Padma Sambhava is the creator of Tibetan Buddhism, and he wrote a book called Self-Liberation Through Seeing with Naked Awareness. That is to say, if you quiet your mind and give up your activities of defending the story of who you are, then you can move from this conditioned awareness where we tend to reside most of the time, and you can move into spacious awareness or naked awareness where you experience the world as it is. So when you say, what is remote viewing good for? It gives you a more spacious way of being in the world. It allows you to take part in the non-local awareness, which is where we're really living, but you have to open your eyes and quiet your mind to experience that.
Now, I've heard that some of these remote viewing abilities have actually some real amazing benefits in the medical field as far as diagnosis and even healing. And you do talk about some of this in your book, don't you?
Yes, I do. That is, remote viewing and intuitive diagnosis is anomalously easy to do. That is, diagnosing illness is the easiest of the remote viewing tasks you would have somebody to do. I had a housemate here who was a professional healer and medical intuitive, and she got me interested in it because of my experience with remote viewing. And for a period of time, she would show up with several envelopes containing a card about some person she knew. And I would always want a blank envelope so that I didn't want to know who the person was. I didn't want to practice reading my teacher's mind. So I didn't want her to give me Marjorie's card so that I would just read her mind and to see how Marjorie is doing. So I always had a blank field that neither I nor my teacher knew what I was describing. And I spent some time studying anatomy and physiology. I got the DVDs from the teaching company on anatomy and physiology. So with the idea that when I would quiet my mind, I'd have an idea what I was looking at. Otherwise, you quiet your mind and you look at somebody's body and it looks like the butcher shop. And I didn't want to have that experience. I want to be able to tell the difference between a pancreas and a gallbladder so I could describe what I'm seeing. And that turned out to be surprisingly easy, like shockingly easy to do. So even though I don't consider myself a medical intuitive, that's not what I do, but in workshops, I always end up with having my pairs of people end by describing the situation, the physical situation, interests of some person they've written down on a card, and that's always the hit of the show. Even though, as a scientist, my interest is, can you describe the object I've brought? Can you describe the picture in the envelope? That's what floats my boat. But what really excites my workshoppers is being able to spend a half hour going on and on and on describing the health and the physiology and the psychology of some distant person. And I've talked now with my good friend Judith Orloff, who's a psychiatrist and very experienced medical intuitive. She's written a great book called Second Sight, showing you how to do medical intuition. Well, I've seen Judith sit on a chair in a big auditorium and say, I'm not going to talk to you about medical intuition. I'm just going to look around here, and if you're agreeable, I'll tell you the way the world is. As you there in the striped shirt in the back, I see that you're worried about your mother. She's got a diabetic condition that's gone out of control, but I think that blah, 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 and she'll get better. And I've seen Judith do that many times, and it's just shocking how, and she's a physician also, of course, just shocking how well she can do truly cold reading a big room and describing detailed medical situations of people and their relatives. I don't know how she does that, except to say that you asked me about medical intuition, and of the things I've been describing, finding downed airplanes, locating hostages, forecasting the market, medical intuition is the easiest of the lot.
Have you found that, in all your research, have you found that the blind type experience is more accurate than, say, looking at something that is known?
I'm not sure what you mean by
blind. So something that's in the blind, as far as you say, or somebody comes and says, the experiments I've seen, you'll have an envelope number 1.
I mean something pure clairvoyance where no one knows the answer.
Right.
I mean a double-blind experiment.
Right. Have you found that seems to be more accurate than
that works just as well? That is the bulk of what we do is pure clairvoyance. That is double-blind. The CIA says the Russians have just crashed a bomber in North Africa with code books. Where is it? Nobody knows the answer to that. So we were in a race with the Soviets to try and find their downed bomber, which did not show up in satellite photography. So working with Joe McMoneagle and another physicist, Gary Langford at SRI, we were able to pinpoint on a map. I sat with Gary, and he would say, well, there are mountains on the right, and then there's a river, and between the river and the mountains is a village. This is up north part of Africa, and if you look between the river and the village, that's where the airplane is. And within a day, American tactical group found the airplane before the Russians, and we got a commendation from President Carter for doing that. He gave us a commendation on television, mentioning the name of our program, which was Grill Flame at the time, a secret program, so we had to change the name of our program. But it was that easy. Gary and I just sat down at our big table, spread out a map of Africa, and he closed his eyes and sort of worked his way north in Africa and put his finger, made a little circle and put his finger on the airplane.
Wow.
Wow.
So what you might ask that makes sense, is it easier to describe something if somebody does know the answer? That is, if you have a clairvoyant task and somebody actually knows the answer, since that's another channel, that is, when I introduce remote viewing to a group of people, I got into all this through magic, standing on the stage doing magic tricks as a teenager, as kids love to fool adults. So I have a beginning of a workshop that my wife refers to as the object in the box trick, where I will describe remote viewing, and then I will say, I have a big briefcase here, and there's something interesting in it that I brought for you. And there are three channels available for you to identify this. There's a telepathic channel, the mind-to-mind channel. I know what the object is, and you can just read my mind and describe my object as a telepathic channel. In addition, there is an object here. You don't really need me. I could just leave the object and say, quiet your mind and describe what's in the object, in the briefcase. So that'd be a clairvoyant channel if you remove me from the picture. In addition, there's a third channel, which is a precognitive channel. So at the end of this exercise, after you've made some drawings, I will then open the briefcase, take out the object, and show it to you, and everybody will get to hold it in your hand. So in the beginning, you'll make a drawing just of your initial impressions, the surprising images that show up in your awareness. So I say, describe what you're experiencing. Don't try and name it. Just make a sketch of the surprising thing that shows up in your consciousness. And that's that's a channel that includes my knowing what it is. Then I say, go on, and what else can you tell me? What can you tell me about the shape or the color, the texture, so forth? And finally, I say, imagine that you're holding in your hand. What can you tell me about the texture as you run your hand over it? How much does it weigh? What's the appearance, so forth. So there are really three channels available, the telepathic channel, the clairvoyance channel, and the looking into the future channel. And I believe all of those are additive, since we know that each of those individually can be described. So I have to believe that it's easier to describe an object if I know what it is.
Right.
An example would be, I had a friend that I used to travel with, and we could amuse ourselves by one person just thinking of an object, just make up an object. So here I am, I'm visualizing something that I don't have anywhere in my field of view. I'm just making up this imaginary object, and I could ask you, describe the surprising thing that pops into your awareness. And you could do that. So that would be a pure mind-to-mind connection. I'm sitting here visualizing an ice cream cone, and you might have a ice cream cone or some kind of comb or something tasty pop into your awareness, and that'd be a pure telepathic description because there is no object.
Right.
All that there is my visualization, and that works perfectly well.
So what are we tapping into here to be able to do this?
Well, there are three aspects available. That is, what we're tapping into is the idea that there's no separation in consciousness. That is, we live in a non-local space-time. Buddhists knew this 2,000 years ago, where they kept teaching that separation is an illusion. There is no time. There is no death. You can talk to the dead because there's no time. And you're therefore able to transcend time with your awareness. Now, modern physics, as of the 1930s, has agreed, or some of them agreed, Einstein did not agree, Schrodinger did agree, that we live in a non-local space-time. Einstein said, I cannot believe in the spooky connection at a distance. And then in the 1970s, 1980s, the idea of non-locality was proved by experiments in the physics laboratory. So it's one of the instances where Einstein was not correct. And by a non-local space-time, it means that, at least for elementary particles like photons and electrons, and for consciousness, there is a surprising connection between things that had once been connected.
And everything was all at one point connected. Is that? I mean, because I know that there's. I've heard of things where people have, well, just like some of the stories that you've explained here, where they obviously never been to this forest where this plane went down or whatever the situation is. So. How do you?
Now, I'm not saying that in consciousness that there is no separation at all. That is, the nature of the space-time we live in is interconnected. It's as though we live in a familiar four-dimensional space. So there's three spatial dimensions plus a time dimension, and that makes four dimensions, as you know. But each of those dimensions is a complex quantity, some complex space together with the real space. What that means is that if you can get off of the material plane, off of the physical plane, a mathematician would say there's a real plane and a complex plane, and you want to get off the real plane, and you can then always find, the deal is, once you get off of the real so-called material plane, then there will always be a path, even from me to Japan, where the path has no distance at all. You can find some x squared plus iy squared where those add to zero. So there is certainly 6,000, 7,000 miles between me and Japan, as the airplane flies, but with our consciousness, there is a path through the complex space-time that has no distance at all. So it's no harder for me to describe the weird object that you have in the studio in Japan than it is to describe something that's going on next door. One of the things we know for a fact is that increasing the distance does not make it any harder to be psychic. Right. And that's because we live in a non-local space-time. Right. It's a property of the geometry of space. It has nothing to do with electromagnetic radiation. So we live in an interconnected space-time, which for consciousness, you have direct access to things in the distance and in the future.
So, are we projecting ourselves, or are we just receiving something that's being projected from another place? As far, I hope you understood.
By and large, you're receiving something from another place. Remote viewing is pretty much of a passive activity. like I ask people in a class, tell me what appears on your mental television set. What are the pictures that appear in your consciousness? That's what we do in a workshop. At SRI, where we're really trying to find something, we can branch out into the aspect of remote viewing that many people think of as out-of-body experience, where you bring with you the continuum from remote viewing to an out-of-body experience. In the out-of-body experience, you can bring with you your emotionality, sensitivity, sexuality, whatever you're comfortable with, and have more mobility at the target. For example, we were once asked as an exercise by the CIA, we think of this as a demonstration of ability task, could we, and I did this with my friend Hella Hammond. Hella was brought in as a control subject. The CIA wanted me to find somebody who had never done this before. And I asked my good friend Hella, the professional photographer, she promised me she'd never done any remote viewing or psychic stuff. So she came into the control, and at the end of a decade became the most reliable, accurate person in the program. So one day, toward the end of my tenure, we were sitting in the shielded room, and the target was Brezhnev's office in the Kremlin. No coordinates, no nothing, just described Brezhnev's office. So I told her that. We were sitting there drinking our coffee, and she said, well, I'm walking down this hall. At the end of the hall, there's a big red door, and it's round at the top. It looks like the door is covered with leather that's held in place by brass upholstery tacks. That's what I see. So I thought that was interesting. I never saw anything like that. So I said, okay, why don't I push open the door and let's see what's inside? And she said, well, it's dark inside. Of course, they're 8 hours ahead of us. So I said, okay, I'll turn on the lights. So this is like a lucid dream we're now doing.
Right.
I'll turn on the lights, and then she can see what's there. She said, oh, I see there's a window on the left side. I can see in the red square. On the right side is a big wooden desk covered with a big piece of glass. And behind the desk, there's a door in the wall. I said, okay, why don't I open that door and let's see what's inside? And she said, oh, there's a flight of stairs. So we went down the stairs to the computer room. And at this point, I began to feel a little uneasy that Hella and I had sort of extended our consciousness into the basement of the Kremlin. That felt like a creepy place to be wandering around. I felt it was dangerous. So I said, I think we've got enough info for them. Let's just call it a day. So we ended up, finished our coffee, and handed in our notes to be transcribed. And 2 years later, I was invited to talk to the Soviet Academy of Sciences, and they said, is there anything you would like to see here in downtown Moscow? I said, yes, I'd like to see Brezhnev's office. I don't need to talk to Brezhnev. I just want to peek at what his office looks like. And they arranged for that, and she had described everything correctly.
Wow.
Had a big door covered with red leather and upholstery tacks, window on the left, the desk on the right. I did not ask to go down to the computer room, but visually everything she described was exactly as I saw 2 years later.
Wow, this is some amazing stuff. We are nearing the top of the hour already, and man, this has blown by fast.
Yeah.
I give you an opportunity to share where people can pick up your new book at. And are you speaking anywhere or making any appearances, book signings, or anything coming up?
Not so much. People can buy my book from Amazon. Become pretty inexpensive. It's $12 from Amazon instead of $19. It's full of pictures, shows you how to do remote viewing, talks about the Buddhist introduction, from 2,000 years ago, does a mathematical model for how ESP actually works, and has a lot of information from the beginning of the program where Pat Price and Ingo Swann actually looked into a communication laboratory belonging to the National Security Agency. I always have a little resistance. NSA stands for No Such Agency. So Price quieted his mind and actually looked into the building and was able to read the names of file folders in the subterranean laboratory of the NSA. We had a whole congressional hearing about why Price went into this place. He was targeted to a nearby building, and he chose to do a whole description of the inside of the CIA listening post. And what congressmen, the NSA guys, wanted to know, you weren't even sent to our place. Why did you go snooping in the NSA facility? And he said, well, in the psychic plane, the more you hide something, the more it shines like a beacon.
Right.
And that was just the brightest thing in my psychic environment. I had to describe it.
So one last quick question before we take a break here. Is there a way to shield from being remote viewed?
There's no way to shield, as far as I know, there's no way to shield ESP. For example, we did experiments where we had Hella Hammett, our great psychic control subject, and Ingo Swann, who's the father of ESP. The two of this odd couple was sent down on a submarine off Santa Catalina that's 500 miles away and 500 feet in seawater, which would shield out electromagnetic waves. Under 500 feet of seawater, it's a electromagnetic dead zone. And that did not impede their psychic abilities at all. Each of them gave an excellent description of what was going on in the Bay Area.
Wow.
So as far as we know, there's no way to shield out ESP.
Okay, well, we'll take a break on that note. I want to thank everybody for listening to this first hour.
Something to tell them is that my new book is The Reality of ESP, and you can see bits of that on my website, which is espresearch.com.
Right.
So if you go to espresearch.com, you can then write to me, and I usually answer questions that people ask me from the website.
Great.
Yeah, we'll have links to both, and we'll have a picture of the book on the page.
Okay, well, I urge you guys to hit that join button if you're not a member of the 100th Monkey Radio yet, and check out the second hour of this amazing conversation with Mr. Russell Targ. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
And we'll see you in the second hour.
Shout, damn, I got freedom. Unless it's being taught like, man, I know you need one. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. Yeah. Unhigh I am, you want the plan, then that's the native. You shouldn't tell an artist not to be creative. You see, the motive is to control more than business. Hitless enoughness in the soul, and I bring much more than your average MC. Please give me a break, man. Let me be me, so I can be free to do as I please. See what I see, be who I be. Hey, yo, act like me. I got the rhyme and my timing from the center. Lyrics from the brain, even when I start to enter. The beats I'm bending, the vibes I'm sending, it's pleasure, never better. Even though shit is a mess, I never stress, in touch with insight, therefore I'm blessed with the armor. Tell your mama, but kill the drama. It's the right time to make you free your mind. face went across the screen. This girl saw me getting raw to the beats with ghetto lean. My self-esteem went through the roof. Stepped into the club, yo, I got juice. Got juice on the inbox. Now she's in my face, dragging me all around the place. Damn, it's a disgrace that I can't enjoy my craft, spew my math. Cause I'm too busy running away from this girl with the dumb laugh. My patch straight so I lose the habit. And yo, I bounce like the rabbit. Yo, she's got the habit cause she's chasing me. I'm out the door, kid. It's in the soul and I'm free. The right sound